WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, the top stories. September 28, 2009, Stadium Massacre trial continues today after several months of suspension in Guinea. Nigerian authorities arrest two of the most wanted terrorist leaders fleeing Burkina Faso into the country. Crude oil exploration in Senegal to produce the first barrel this year end. And more reactions trailed Nigeria's President Tinubu's emergence as the new ECOWAS chair.
The agenda, the domestic agenda of President Tinubu is quite huge. It is too early because also the dynamic within the regional body are quite interesting and full of challenges.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imoh Edet with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. Let's begin in Guinea, where the trial for the September 28, 2009 massacre is underway, with expected testimonies from civil parties. It resumed on Monday after a month of suspension. Upon reopening, Captain Marcel Goulevagu, nephew of Captain Dadis Camara, the defendant in the trial, wished to change his version of events. Goulevagu accused Musa Dadis Camara of being primarily responsible for the September 28 massacre. Abdullah Hassan brings us more details.
When Captain Marcel Goulevagu asked for the floor to change his version of events, he said that he had kept silent at the beginning of the trial to preserve his life. This time, he said that the head of the junta in 2009, Captain Musa Dadis Camara, was solely responsible for the September 28, 2009 massacre. Dadis Camara and his parallel guard planned the massacre, which left more than 150 people dead, he continued. To clear his name, Captain Marcel, Dadis Camara's nephew, spent several minutes boasting about his prowess in the army. Marcel Goulevagu nonetheless acknowledged his share of responsibility, finally indicating that he had been at the stadium where the massacre took place. He said he has seen Commander Abubakar Siddiqui Jakite, alias Tumba, Colonel Musa Tiburu Camara, former commander of Camp Kondara, and Joseph Makambo, former head of operations for Captain Dadis Camara. He apologized to the people of Guinea for his resilience, which he said had been taken advantage of by some people. Captain Marcel Goulevagu changed his story several months after his first appearance on the stand. He had denied having been at the stadium on the day of the massacre and denied any involvement in the events which, according to the UN, left more than 150 people dead.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. Mauritania is again asking Mali to rejoin the G5 Sahel organization after the transitional government in May 2022 withdrew from the regional military alliance fighting against jihadist groups. The call on Monday was made by President Mohamed Ould Sheikh Al Ghazouani in Nouakchott at the opening of the fourth session of the General Assembly of the Sahel Alliance. The alliance is a platform of 27 bilateral partners and donors created to mobilize international aid for the development of the region. Ogeberika completes the story.
The Mauritanian president regretted the withdrawal of Mali from the organization and its joint force, which he said affects the region's collective strength in the fight against jihadists. Other countries of the alliance have previously pleaded with Mali to return to the organization. I hope that this withdrawal will be very temporary, President Ghazouani declared, citing the departure of the French force Barkhane as well as the outbreak of the conflict in Sudan as further exposing the region. Bamako opted out of the European Union-funded organization after it complained of a loss of autonomy and instrumentalization within the body comprising Mauritania, Chad, Burkina and Niger. The G5 Sahel Joint Force had at a time suggested a joint approach with its international partners to prevent the spread of jihadism in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, a crisis that now threatens coastal states. Years after its creation, joint operations have remained few and the security situation in the Sahel has continued to deteriorate. In concluding his speech Monday, President Mohamed Ould Sheikh called for more commitment and mobilization of resources for the G5 Sahel and for short and long-term development actions in favor of the populations.
Ogubierika reporting there. Still on security matters, the Nigerian military has announced the arrest of two of the most wanted terrorist leaders in a joint operation in the country. The operation, in collaboration with the French army, took place in the so-called three-border area between Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso. Tawfiq Abdul Nasser completes the story.
The operation took place in Goro, not far from Burkina Faso and Mali. This air-land operation, conducted jointly by the Nigerian and French soldiers, resulted in the neutralization of several Islamic State group fighters. According to local authorities, two terrorist leaders wanted in Burkina Faso were also captured. A price had been put on their heads a month ago by the Burkina Faso military authorities. The first is believed to be Abu Mariam alias Zaid. He was arrested in the village of Ingra, north of Goro. He is said to be the person in charge within the EIGS of trying all the people abducted in the tri-border area. The second is terrorist leader Sita Hussein alias Lukman. He was arrested between the villages of Lamdu and Amarsingue, not far from the town of Terra. Hussein, until his arrest, supervised operations for the Islamic State group in the Terra region of Niger and Burkina Faso. According to the military command, he was behind the Seitanga attack in June in eastern Burkina Faso, in which around 100 people were killed. At the moment, there are no details as to whether these two men, presented as terrorist leaders, are being held. Terrorists captured in Niger are usually brought before the Anti-Terrorist Prosecutor's Office and then held in a high-security prison after being tried. Niamey welcomed the good military cooperation between Nigerian and French soldiers who have been engaged in the fight against terrorism for several months.
Tawfiq Abdul Nasser reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now, ahead of the end of the candidate nomination process in Liberia, several women organizations have complained of neglect over the low level of women in political parties' legislative seats. The nomination process started from June 14, 2023 and will end on July 14, 2023 as the National Elections Commission has ruled out the possibility of extending the process. WDL's Monrovia correspondent Darlington Popper reports.
Aspirants seeking elected positions in the October 2023 presidential and legislative elections are submitting their nomination packages to the Electoral Commission in order to qualify for the ballot. If passed, they become candidates representing their parties. However, the total names of women candidates so far on the Electoral Commission's preliminary listing is far below the 30% threshold that all political parties agree on in a memorandum of understanding signed recently. In their petition, an official of the women's grouping, Howard Jembe and others, called on the Commission to compel political parties to respect the MOU seeking 30% women representation.
Women's political participation for more than 20 years and have been continually let down by elected officials and political parties who do not serve their interests. Political parties have continually failed to endeavor to ensure that not less than 30% are on their list.
It is crucial that we break away from business as usual and take significant steps towards promoting women's political participation. Political parties have continually demonstrated that they do not have any interest in strengthening the internal democracy and promoting equal political participation. Additionally, the persistent trend of a declining proportion of women being included in the candidates' roster of political parties signals a lack of progress in this area.
In a rather short response whilst receiving a petition, the co-chairperson of the commission, Tapler Rees, hailed the petitioners for the appeal, assuring that the electoral body will review the document and decide the way forward.
Thank you for bringing a statement. We'll take it to the board.
The petition by the group on Monday carries one of the several concerns raised since the start of the process by the electoral body leading to October 10. For all who be applicants, they have until July 14 to collect their packages and ensure their documents are submitted. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Pogba in Monrovia.
On the financial matters now, the Bank of Ghana has cautioned savings and loan institutions to be cautious in their dealings due to the rising interest rates in the country and also growing non-performing loans on their books. According to the head of banking supervision of the bank, if the institutions does not check this phenomenon, it could trigger some financial risk which may affect profitability. Ghana recently went through a phase of bank collapse due to liquidity issues and non-availability to raise minimum capital requirements due to some of these issues raised by the bank. From Accra, Tewin Lawson reports.
According to the Bank of Ghana, it has observed some marginal increase in non-performing loans of a significant number of financial institutions, mainly savings and loans companies. The central bank has cautioned the institutions to be wary of this trend as it has a propensity to reduce their asset quality and profitability. Speaking at the launch of the 20th anniversary of the Bayport Savings and Loans in Accra, Head of Banking Supervision, OSIWA, says this is of major concern to the central bank and institutions need to address it as soon as possible.
We would manage this to improve the asset quality of the institution. This will also enhance the profitability of the institution.
On their part, Trenebi Okodri-Abuache, the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Association of Savings and Loans Companies, says they've taken notice of this and engaged members to improve their efficiencies in that light.
One of the ways is the policy rate. Second, where we are able to work with the government to bring down the treasury bill rates, which is a big influence thing on the whole market. I will encourage financial institutions to also look more at operational efficiency, embracing technology to making the customer happy and the shareholder also bringing in the necessary funds to cushion the various financial institutions.
Mr. Boachi also called on the government to review the interest rates as the finance minister readies himself to deliver the mid-year budget on July 27.
It's our expectation that the government will honor his commitments to those that he has borrowed from. Again, if Treasury bill, any plan that will make sure Treasury bill rate comes to the barest minimum.
Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiewin Imbila Lawson in Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. September 28, 2009, Sida massacre trial in Guinea continues today after 7 months of suspension. Nigerian authorities arrest two of the most wanted terrorist leaders fleeing Burkina Faso into the country. Crude oil exploration in Senegal to produce its first barrel this year, and that's on the other half of the news. And reactions trail Nigeria's President Tinubu's emergence as the new ECOWAS chair. And that's also on our guest interview segment. And we also have the newspaper review and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget you can listen to us live on WADR.org. Senegal's Minister of Petroleum and Energy, Sophie Gladima, says the ongoing oil exploration in the country is expected to produce its first barrel of oil at the end of 2023 or at the beginning of 2024. Speaking in Dakar, the minister said the first barrel should have been available since last June, but there were some unforeseen events which meant that the barrel could not be available as planned. Mrs. Gladima urges the population to see the oil exploration as a blessing to the country and not a curse.
Ce pétrole et ce gaz, nous devons l'exploiter dans la stabilité. Parce que si nous n'avons pas la stabilité, l'exploitation passerait entre les mains.
We need to exploit this oil and gas with stability because if there isn't stability, these resources will pass into the hands of other countries, as has happened elsewhere. That's why I think every Senegalese is concerned. It's true that there are problems, but let's pull all these problems behind us. The oil arriving in our country must not be a curse, but it must create happiness for the Senegalese people, so that Senegal, with industrialization, can create jobs and well-being for the Senegalese people, so that Senegal can be among the emerging countries. I say it again and again, the first barrel will arrive at the end of 2023 and 2024 at the latest.
Que le Sénégal soit dans les pays émergents. Le premier baril, on a dit, j'ai toujours dit et je reste sur ça.
Senegal's Energy Minister Sophie Gladema speaking there. The Togolese government has received through the Humanitarian Assistance Office of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, $3 million, about 1.8 billion CFA francs in contributions to immediate humanitarian response to support the populations in the northern region of the country. The fund is to provide relief items for those affected by violence and displacement from the Sahel. James Ejapon tells us more.
According to government data, insecurity along Togo's northern border has displaced tens of thousands of people at a time when more than 460,000 individuals require an emergency nutritional solution to meet their basic needs. With this financial contribution, USAID partners the World Food Programme WFP and Catholic Relief Services CRS, working closely with the government of Togo to provide life-saving assistance to newly displaced people and vulnerable members of the host community. The government said the funding will enable CRS, in collaboration with the Diocese of Dakar City, to provide multi-purpose financial assistance to approximately 27,000 people to cover their basic needs. The funding will also help the World Food Programme, WFP, which for years has been a leading actor in northern Togo, to provide an additional 37,000 people with an emergency nutrition response for 3 months. This support will help vulnerable populations during the lean season when families usually need the most help. To ensure the long-term resilience of communities, WFP will also help families develop income-generating activities. A statement from USAID notes that the United States will stand with the Togolese people during this especially difficult time.
James Japan reporting there.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Let's take you back now to Monrovia for the newspaper review with Darlington Popper.
For this edition of Press Review, we have with us 3 newspapers from Liberia. They are the Front Page Africa newspaper, the News newspaper, and the Hot Pepper newspaper. We will begin a review process with the Front Page Africa newspaper. Boaka's painful betrayal. We see the photograph of Henry Costa on the front page of the Front Page Africa newspaper. Still on the front page of the Front Page Africa newspaper. Following votes by ECOWAS heads of state and governments, Liberia endorsed as UN Security Council non-permanent member. We see the photograph of President George Manawiya on the front page of the Front Page Africa newspaper. Expanding the energy sector, Liberia World Bank signed US $300 million agreement for St. Paul River Hydropower Plant project. On the back page of the Front Page Africa newspaper, we see a death announcement here. From the Front Page Africa newspaper, the News newspaper is next. I am Clindy. We are peace on holy trip to Israel. We see the photograph again of President George Weah on the front page of the News newspaper. Painful betrayal. Costa breaks silence on Boakai. On the back page of the News newspaper, bunch of squanderers. Representative Willie descends on opposition. PPCC gets new executive director. CSA to introduce automated staff attendance system within the public service. From the News newspaper, our last stop for this edition of Press Review is the Hot Pepper newspaper. Joseph Boaka's selection of Kun as running mate is slap in the face to the United States. We see the photograph of talk show host Henry Costa and Ambassador Joseph Yuma Boaka ahead of the 2023 elections. West Africa Elders Forum due in Monrovia today. We see the photograph of former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan on the back page of the Hot Pepper newspaper. ECOWAS endorses Liberia's ambition for UN Security Council non-permanent seat. President Weah announces upon arrival from Bissau. We will leave it right there. NDC resolves to support Ambassador Boakar's presidential bid. On that note, we'll have to conclude today's edition of Press Review. But before we go, these are the newspapers we actually followed on today's edition. We followed Front Page Africa newspaper, the News newspaper, and the Hot Pepper newspaper was our last stop. On that note, thank you so much for following, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Darlington Papa Then Monrovia with the newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Now, the appointment of Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu as a new ECOWAS chair has sparked a subtle debate among experts, with each to his own opinion. And so, was he voted in early? Well, that's the argument, with some commentators citing Tinubu's domestic agenda. Tinubu, who takes over from President Umaru Sissoco Embalo of Guinea-Bissau, could have been voted in for some reasons which may not be limited to Nigeria's economic endowment, says Morgan Asogba, an international relations expert. For others, President Bola Tinubu's election comes amid deepening insecurity, including military coups and terrorism, regional economic crisis, shades of challenges that may affect his time in office. Take a listen.
I thoroughly find myself understanding more those who are of the thought that it is a little bit too early, especially that the agenda, the domestic agenda of President Tinubu is quite huge. It is too early because also the dynamic within the regional body are quite interesting and full of challenges. And when I say that, we have a kind of disintegration process going on with the three states that he personally decided to, let's say, address. I'm talking about Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. And the tone that he took is not quite, let's say, a conciliating tone. Within dynamic that for when you take into consideration the dynamic that has been going on, this is going to be very tough for President Bola Tinubu and could be revealed itself of being quite a miscalculation, because if he allows himself to be driven by the regional issue and the domestic issue as it is needed, we might have a term in office challenge. And I don't think this is the best for President Bola Tinubu.
There is an argument that President Tinubu's appointment follows Nigeria's ability to manage ECOWAS, both in financial terms and manpower, or should I say, on the basis of what it can bring to the table.
Of course, when it comes to weight within the international scene, what you bring on the table is very important, and your ability to influence the decision-making process of other head of state. And this all depends not just on economic issue, but also manpower. And when it comes to manpower here, we are talking about the army and all the arms that goes with it. President Tinubu has been introducing in a more practical way the idea of a regional force that will be handling coups, issues, and also intervene in terms of fight against terrorism within the whole regional institution. This is an idea, and Nigeria does have the contingent that could, let's say, feed.
Should President Tinubu succeed in office and leave behind a good legacy, what must he do?
We will speak about failure if his appointment and his mandate at the head of the regional body turns to not be productive. And the productivity should not be far-fetched. If President Tinubu is capable of bringing the various regional leaders together, enhancing the regional integration process, meaning bringing Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea fully on board within the regional body, and succeeding or having a successful achievement by bringing them together in terms of providing the whole regional body with security in terms of fighting terrorism. These things are all possible.
Morgan Asogba is an international relations expert. And here is Sport News with Sankle Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Cote d'Ivoire's national under-20 team faced a disappointing start in the second edition of the WAFU B Boys Cup as the host nation was defeated 1-0 by Burkina Faso. Zakaria Tintes' 87th lone goal was deflected by header, beating goalkeeper Modrici Brito in the net. Despite an additional 5 minutes of stoppage time indicated by the fourth official, the Junior Elephants failed to equalize. In the other match of the day, Ghana and Niger battled to a 1-1 draw. Mustafa Yakub, who opened the scoring for Ghana in the 18th minute before Abdullahi Ibrahim Latini equalized for Niger. In tennis, Tunisian international Ons Jabeur defeated Petra Kvitova to reach the Wimbledon quarterfinals. The African star beat the two-time winner Kvitova 6-0, 6-3 to set up a repeat of last year's final against Elena Rybakina. Meanwhile, Kazakh champion Rybakina booked a place to the quarterfinals following a win against 13th seed Beatrice Haddad Maya, who retired with an injury after just 5 games of their match. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
Thank you, Janko, there with Sport News. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM and in Liberia on Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM Lufa County, as well as in Ghana on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. And also thanks to the technical team of Inyasi Billy Moore has been on the console and Mustafa Sek on the web stream. Do interact with us via social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram at WADR News and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English service. I am Imoh Edet. Good afternoon.
News, talk, music, get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar.